Hey everyone. So before I actually start into this article that I'll be referencing that was posted by Andrew Lawton, a broadcaster, speaker, and columnist, an independent broadcaster, speaker, and columnist, I might add, from Canada, and it's an article referencing the International Migration Pact. You know, the UN Migration Pact that these central planners are down there trying to conjure up without asking anyone in their domestic populations, right? So, you know, Justin Trudeau, he's a big proponent of signing this migration pact, which seeks to somewhat destroy or eliminate the sovereignty of Canada. And like I say, even though they suggest that it's a non-binding agreement, well, we're going to be dealing with that in this particular article. But like I say, before I even start into referencing this article, and I'm going to do it real quick, I just want to point out that myself, Victor Pross, and Tim Moen, we're going to be having a Google Hangout on Tuesday, December 11th at 6 p.m. Pacific time regarding this very topic. Anyways, this particular article comes out of andrewlawton.ca with a headline, "The Deception of Non-Binding Resolutions, December 7th, 2018. Canada's Parliament launched a whole-of-government approach to fighting Islamophobia. Justin Trudeau is imposing a national carbon tax to fulfill obligations under the Paris Climate Change Accord. The United Nations Security Council declared Israel to be in flagrant violation of international law. These situations all share something in common. They came about through non-binding resolutions. That didn't stop them from having real consequences." So yeah, this is a perfect example where Andrew's probably going to be referencing and talking about the fact that even though they're suggesting, putting out there right now that all these agreements, well, they're non-binding, don't worry, you're not going to lose complete sovereignty over your country. But like I say, once you start down that road, once you head down to that slippery slope, well, there's a reason why they call it a slippery slope, folks, is because it doesn't take much to create an era or atmosphere where, yeah, you're going to slip up and that slope is going to drag you down to a place you don't want to go. Which is why you never want to set this kind of precedent to start with. Whether it's forced or imposed or mandated, or even if they suggest that right now it's just a suggestion, right? Well, these suggestions, like I say, when they're suggestions that are put forth and presented by those who want to be in positions of authority, those who try to create laws and legislation, which is what, you know, bodies such as the United Nations, or those who are figureheads or leaders of particular states or countries, like I say, they might want to, like I say, central planners aren't going to try to jam that down your throat right off the bat because they realize that that's not the way to do it. That's not the proper approach. These politicians know that, no, we want to gently cram it down you. Actually, what they want to do, they don't want to jam it down your throat. They want to make you feel so guilty. They want to impose so many social and economic hardships upon you that you'll just open up and swallow it, whether you like it or not. A more significant one is looming. The United Nations Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration is set to be signed by representatives of dozens of countries, including Canada, next week in Morocco. Like any General Assembly resolution, the pact itself isn't legally binding, though no one should be duped into thinking it carries no weight. Just listen to the way the Compact's champions describe it. The United Nations say it is a critical step to tackling international migration. Critical, folks. Yeah, that's a key word. In a Maclean's op-ed, Immigration Minister Ahmed Hussein said member states and partners will thus hold each other more accountable on their promises to deliver results for refugees and their hosts. So how do you hold someone accountable, right? Must be something underlying that they're building up to. Not only will Canada be expected to adhere to the agreement, but countries like Greece and Sudan will be the ones enforcing it should they sign on. Trudeau has mocked those who say the document threatens sovereignty. How does it not, when nation states will be responsible for policing each other's immigration policies? Exactly. Think about it. Just, like I say, reality over rhetoric, and Andrew's basically saying the same thing. Think about the reality of what this represents, and don't just go by the rhetoric espoused by those who want to impose that upon you. Because those aren't the people that are going to be honest and objective. Louise Arbour, the UN's Special Representative for International Migration, said in an interview it was puzzling that countries were rejecting the compact. There's not a single country that is obligated to do anything that it doesn't want to, she said. Perhaps that's why so many countries are refusing to sign, because they already know they don't want what it prescribes. Like most supporters of the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, Arbaran Hussein wants to believe this is somehow of critical importance, yet also toothless. Yeah, that's the thing, folks. You can't have it both ways. They keep talking about it, it's critical, and like I say, they talk about it as it's something that's got to happen. It's going to happen. Just accept it, folks. It's going to happen. Don't try to run against this. Don't try to turn against this global migration pact, because the countries that do, well, you've seen the political rhetoric. They're basically trying to suggest that any country or politician that's a leader of a country that doesn't sign on to this particular agreement, even though it's non-binding, oh, they're terrible. I mean, think about the political propaganda that you're seeing out there towards those who haven't signed on to the agreement. I mean, Trump's a perfect example. Austria is another example. A lot of those European nations that are refusing to do so at this point in time, they're all, like I say, you're seeing them being thrown under the bus and basically suggesting that these are terrible, terrible, terrible countries, terrible people, right? And yet they keep suggesting that it's really, really important that countries adopt this, but hey, it's non-binding, so why would you reject it? Well, if they reject it and if it's non-binding, then what the fuck does it matter? Once again, these people are using ridiculous logic. Well, it's not logic. It's political sophistry. It's political propaganda. It's political speech as a means to suppress or silence anyone that stands in opposition to this compact. The only reason these sorts of initiatives are couched in such equivocal terms is to shroud their Orwellian nature. That's the only way to describe an agreement compelling signatories to govern the tone of media coverage of immigration. This is one of the clauses. Promote independent, objective, and quality reporting of media outlets, including internet-based information, including by sensitizing and educating media professionals on migration-related issues and terminology, investing in ethical reporting standards and advertising, and stopping allocation of public funding or material support to media outlets that systematically promote intolerance, xenophobia, racism, and other forms of discrimination towards migrants, in full respect for the freedoms of the media. Freedoms of the... Why would you put in full respect for the freedoms of the media when they're saying, like, if you're a promoter or an advocate of the global migration compact, well, you're praised and applauded. But yet, if you're an opponent to this mass immigration or this global migration compact, well, you shouldn't have any public funding or material support afforded to you. So that sounds very much, right? That sounds very much like someone's trying to create a situation where only one side of that opinion is going to be deemed worthy of financial support. So yeah, once again, Lawton is pointing out here that binding or non-binding, this is political rhetoric meant to soothe the concerns of people that should be rightfully concerned. And Andrew is here pointing out, just like I do on a regular basis, that politicians aren't going to use like blatant rhetoric like, you have to do this, right? There's a reason why they call it political rhetoric, folks. That kind of political rhetoric, they're going to come at you with some pretense of benevolence. We don't live in the old days, in the dark ages where authoritarian hacks just said what they wanted to do openly and forthright. Now they use, like I say, political language to describe what they're going to do. But once again, the end consequence, the end result is going to basically be the same. They're going to force and impose their ideas on you, whether they suggest they're going to do it in that manner or not. Might not come out day one, but eventually, like I say, you're heading down that path. That's the path they want to put you on. So whether the agreement's binding today, that doesn't mean shit. What's going to happen in the short term or in the near term or the immediate future subsequent to this kind of shit? That's what you need to concern yourself. Not what it means today, but what's it going to mean tomorrow or every other day thereafter. This clause is part of the pact's core objective to shape perceptions of migration. The UN's position, and as of next week, Canada's, is that anyone who believes in anything other than open borders and mass unrestricted immigration is wrong and in need of sensitizing and educating. That's perhaps why Trudeau's team is already taking aim at the compact's critics with the usual litany of accusations of racism and xenophobia and sowing conspiracy theories. Canada will be signing this agreement to withhold public funds from media outlets that criticize immigration just 3 weeks after announcing a government panel will be responsible for determining which media companies get access to $595 million slush fund. Yeah, think about that. So this is a political message they're sending out there. Is either you get the fuck on board or you're going to have to fight for the scraps or those few dollars out there that's still left and relegated to the private sector, because big government has been ramped up to the point where, I mean, CBC gets what, in excess of $1 billion, and now they're going to spend in excess of $600 million to try to bring the rest of the media under their fold. And those few people out there that are in opposition to that, you get nothing. So you got to try to stand in opposition to these people that got the gigantic bureaucracy of the state and all that money, power, and influence that is afforded them as a consequence of that government intervention or support. And you're going to have to challenge those people. You as the private sector business or organization or corporation, they're saying, yeah, we're going to throw you the wolves. You're going to have to function. You're going to figure out how you're going to survive after this. But we're going to take care. Hey, if you're on our team, the collectivist team, on team left, yeah, we'll forcefully confiscate and redistribute the income and wealth of millions of Canadians and even unborn at this point in time to prop you up and to subsidize you. But you better say what we want you to say. Otherwise, no money for you. The compact doesn't distinguish between legal and illegal immigrants. So it's conceivable that columnists like myself who challenge illegal immigrants or asylum seekers who cross the border illegally will be running afoul of Canada's commitment to a sensitized and re-educated press. I don't know how Canada plans to enforce that specific provision, but the Trudeau government wouldn't be signing onto the agreement if it didn't support it. Even if the UN can't demand compliance, Trudeau clearly supports making it Canadian law. Exactly. Exactly. It takes a little while before they implement that into law. The ideas come up first. They try to hammer it out and figure out if it's politically viable. And if it's not politically viable, if they can do it and the population will accept it voluntarily, they'll just do it that way. But hey, if the people are unwilling to accept it voluntarily, of course they'll turn it into a top-down authoritarian mandate. That's what governments do. Just as Trudeau uses the Paris Climate Accord as his basis for domestic environmental policy, he'll use this compact as justification for flawed immigration policy. We can expect him to ramp through legislation under the guise of it being necessary to meet international obligations. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can definitely see that already. In recent years, there seems to be a non-binding resolution for every occasion. Such a declaration on the books invariably sets the stage for a binding law down the road. Remember, the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration itself is the byproduct of the UN's New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants, which is supposedly non-binding. This was a point I stressed during Canada's debate about the anti-Islamophobia motion M103. It was touted as merely symbolic, yet triggered extensive hearings in which MPs entertained numerous status proposals, including a thankfully rejected one to revoke the broadcast license for media outlets that criticize Islam. The UN Migration Pact is unfolding in a very similar way, albeit on a global scale. The Angela Merkel's and Emmanuel Macron's of the world appear to be idle virtue signalers, but are actually demonstrating a willingness to trade in their own nation's immigration system for a globalist fantasy. Whenever Trudeau is forced to defend his government's record on immigration, he touts the rigorous and robust nature of Canada's immigration system. If our system is as effective as he thinks, why would we want to link it to the less adequate ones of other countries? While this pact doesn't eliminate borders, I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes the basis for a push from the UN's more radical members for a large-scale European Union-style experiment of free movement across once sovereign nations. This is how the non-binding becomes the binding. Canadians must see through the lie. Great job, Andrew Lawton. This was, like I say, I'll post a link to this article in the description of it below. But damn, this is the kind of information that Canadians really need to hear, which is why I'm covering it and making this video. Don't forget, like I say, me, Victor Pross, and Tim Mullen, we're going to be having a really in-depth conversation regarding this global compact, this migration compact that Trudeau is trying to jam down the Canadian people's throat with no input whatsoever. There's no referendum on it. There's no asking Canadians' opinion. Once again, he's trying to jam it down our throat. I don't know of any Canadians that have agreed to or signed on to this. And I've talked to quite a lot of Canadians. And just to make that perfectly and crystal clear, let's make our voices heard. Let's push back enough against Trudeau and his ilk so that our feelings regarding this mass immigration compact is well known and established and undeniable. Don't be scared. Don't be shy. Be brave and be bold. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.